Well, they're cutouts. The best description is not so much agents, but cutouts.
Ah, okay.
They're like cartoon characters that the Anglo-Americans constructed in order to perpetuate the petrodollar standard, follow orders, buy U.S.-made weaponry, and continue the game. But we tossed them under the bus after we stole their gold in Switzerland using the ruse of Credit Suisse and UBS. Since when does the U.S. Department of Justice have jurisdiction over the Swiss banks?
Good question.
Very simple question. When the Swiss want to steal the Arab gold with us, who's defending the Arabs and their gold? Nobody. Arabs and the Muslims are the most miserable in the history of mankind for self-defense. They hire it out. They outsource their protection. It's so ironic, but for the last 20 years, the Mossad has been in charge of Saudi royal security, while they talk about Israel being their enemy. No, Israel's their protector. This is how absurd it is.
No, wait a minute. Let me wind that back for a second. What you're saying is that the Mossad has been in charge of protecting the Saudi royal family, despite the fact that their subjects are the most prolific when it comes to being part of what we would describe as the Wahhabist sect of Islam, which is probably the most aggressive, extremist, really in truth, movement in the Islamic faith, which would be probably the most anti-Israeli, anti-Jewish, I mean, this is really what they're about. If you ever have a conversation
they're
with them,
anti-West more than they are anti-Jewish.
Oh, but specifically they're anti-Jewish, and they're absolutely anti-Western. I mean, they don't love us and never did. That's for sure. They don't love anything.
The Wahhabis have never laid a finger on Israel.
But they never have, right? But isn't that really bizarre that you're telling us that the Mossad would be at the head of security for the Saudi?
They want expert security, and they're compromised, and they're a bunch of hypocrites. Okay, you were wondering, about the Saudis and why do they continue to pump oil when they're losing money and they got deficits and they're just destroying their whole system? If they don't pump the oil, their OPEC competitors will. They've all running deficits. If they pump less oil, the deficits are bigger, so they increase the pumping even as the price goes down. Okay, a very interesting phenomenon took place. I mentioned that the petrodollar was broken and being dismantled, but I didn't really describe what that means and how that comes about. And it's very difficult to get this exactly and communicate it exactly, but here's my understanding in a good broad stroke. About 2 years ago, we decided, the U.S., I'm U.S. citizen.
Okay.
The U.S. government decided we're going to steal the Arab gold, lure them into support of ISIS, drain their system, throw them under the bus, and capture their $5 trillion in savings. Steal $500 billion of their gold and steal $5 trillion of their treasury bonds. That's motive to destroy a nation. Okay, so the petrodollar as a construct platform was wrecked. It was dismantled. And what that means is vast contracts in the hundreds of billions of dollars, linking the dollar to the oil price, linking the euro to the oil price, the British pound to the oil price, and the yen to the oil price, namely the four currencies from the IMF basket. Okay, these contracts began to be dismantled in 2014. And in 2015, it picked up a lot of speed, and the dismantling of a multi-billion, like a $200 billion contract, let's say Paris, France wants to dissolve some of these, they have to come up with dollars to redeem the owners of the contracts. The contract holders are saying, we don't want the contract anymore. We're going to sell the contract. We need $200 billion in dollars. and you have a month to do it. So the dollar swap facility, that's your smoking gun. It started ramping up in 2015 with horrendous red light signals going off. Who's borrowing all the dollars for the dollar swap facility at the Fed and the Euro Central Bank? The Euro Central Bank was responsible for $2 trillion, $2.1 trillion in dollar swaps back in 2012. That's when I think the petrodollar was starting to be dissolved. Okay, so that forced up demand in the dollar, which lifted the dollar relative to other currencies. In other words, you got this supposed dollar strength. But so many different structures are in the petrodollar that when the dollar goes up, oil goes down. So the part they didn't really plan on, and they're blaming it on Russia, which is stupid, and blaming it on the Saudis to harm Russia, which is stupid. No, it's much simpler. The petrodollar got dismantled, the dollar went up, and like a teeter-totter, the oil went down and wrecked OPEC.
So now they're in a position where they